Section 42. Vaisampayana said, Then the illustrious and wise king Dhritarashtra, having applauded the words spoken by Vidura, questioned Sanat-sujata in secret, desirous of obtaining the highest of all knowledge. And the king questioned the Rishi, saying, O Sanat-sujata, I hear that thou art of the opinion that there is no death. Again it is said that the gods and the asuras practice ascetic austerities in order to avoid death. Of these two opinions, then which is true? Sanat-sujata said, Some say death is avertible by particular acts. Others' opinion, there is no death. Thou hast asked me which of these is true. Listen to me, O king, as I discourse to thee on this, so that thy doubts may be removed. Know, O Kshatriya, that both of these are true. The learned are of opinion that death results from ignorance. I say that ignorance is death, and so the absence of ignorance, knowledge, is immortality. It is from ignorance that the asuras became subject to defeat and death, and it is from the absence of ignorance that the gods have attained the nature of Brahman. Death doth not devour creatures. Like a tiger, its form itself is unascertainable. Besides this, some imagine Yama to be death. This, however, is due to the weakness of the mind. The pursuit of Brahman or self-knowledge is immortality. That imaginary god Yama holdeth his sway in the regions of Pitris, being the source of bliss to the virtuous and woe to the sinful. It is at his command that death in the form of wrath, ignorance, and covetousness occurreth among men. Swayed by pride, men always walk in unrighteous path. None amongst them succeeds in attaining to this real nature. With their understanding clouded and themselves swayed by these passions, they cast off their bodies and repeatedly fall into hell. They are always followed by their senses. It is for this that ignorance receives the name of death. Those men that desire the fruits of action, when the time cometh for enjoying those fruits, proceed to heaven, casting off their bodies. Hence they cannot avoid death. Embodied creatures, from inability to attain the knowledge of Brahman, and from their connection with earthly enjoyments, are obliged to sojourn in a cycle of rebirths, up and down and around. The natural inclination of man towards pursuits that are unreal is alone the cause of the senses being led to error. The soul that is constantly affected by the pursuit of objects that are unreal, remembering only that which it is always engaged, adoreth only earthly enjoyments that surround it. The desire of enjoyments first killeth men. Lust and wrath soon will follow behind it. These three, viz. The desire of enjoyments, lust and wrath, lead foolish men to death. They, however, that have conquered their souls, succeed by self-restraint to escape death. He that hath conquered his soul without suffering himself to be excited by his ambitious desire, conquereth these, regarding them as of no value, by the aid of self-knowledge. Ignorance, assuming the form of Yama, cannot devour that learned man who controlled his desires in this manner. That man who followeth his desires is destroyed along with his desires. He, however, that can renounce desire can certainly drive away all kinds of woe. Desire is indeed ignorance and darkness and hell in respect of all creatures, for swayed by it they lose their senses. As intoxicated persons in walking along a street reel towards roots and holes, so men too under the influence of desire, misled by deluding joys, run towards destruction. What can death do to a person whose soul hath not been confounded or misled by desire? To him death hath no terrors, like a tiger made of straw. Therefore, O Kshatriya, if the existence of desire, which is ignorance, is to be destroyed, no wish, not even the slightest one, is either to be thought of or pursued. That soul which is in thy body, associated as it is with wrath and covetousness, and filled with ignorance, that is death. Knowing that death arises in this way, he that relies on knowledge entertaineth no fear of death. Indeed, as the body is destroyed when brought under the influence of death, so death itself is destroyed when it comes under the influence of knowledge. Dhritarashtra said, the Vedas declare that emancipating capacity of those highly sacred and eternal regions that are said to be obtainable by the regenerate classes, by prayers and sacrifices. Knowing this, why should not a learned person have recourse to religious acts? Sanat-sujata said, indeed, he that is without knowledge proceedeth thither by the path indicated by thee, and the Vedas also declare that thither are both bliss and emancipation. But he that regardeth of material body to be self, if he succeeds in renouncing desire, at once attaineth emancipation, or Brahman. If however one seeketh emancipation without renouncing desire, one must have to proceed along the prescribed route of action, taking care to destroy the chances of his retracing the roads that he hath once passed over. Dhritarashtra said, who is it that urgeth that unborn and ancient one? If again it is he that is all this universe, in consequence of his having entered everything, without desire as he is, what can he be, his action or his happiness? O learned sage, tell me all this truly. Sanat-sujata said, there is great objection in completely identifying as here the two that are different creatures always spring from the union of conditions with what in its essence is without conditions. This view doth not detract from the supremacy of the unborn and the ancient one. As for men, they also originate in the union of conditions. All this that appears is nothing but that everlasting Supreme Soul. Indeed, the universe is created by the Supreme Soul itself, undergoing transformations. The Vedas do attribute this power of self-formation to the Supreme Soul, for the identity again of the power and its possessor. Both the Vedas and others are the authority. Dhritarashtra said, in this world some practice virtue and some renounce action or karma, adopting what is called sannyasa yoga. Respecting those that practice virtue, I ask, is virtue competent to destroy vice, or is it itself destroyed by vice? Sanat-sujata said, the fruits of virtue and of perfect inaction are both serviceable in that respect, that is, for procuring emancipation. Indeed, both are sure means for the attainment of emancipation. The man, however, that is wise achieveth success by knowledge in action. On the other hand, the materialist acquireth merit by action, and as the consequence thereof emancipation. He hath also in course of his pursuit to incur sin, having obtained again fruits of both virtue and vice which are transitory. Heaven having its end has also hell in respect of the virtuous and the sinful. The man of action becometh once more addicted to action as the consequence of his own previous virtues and vices. The man of action, however, who possesseth intelligence, destroyeth his sins by his virtuous acts. Virtue therefore is strong, and hence the success of the man of action. Dhritarashtra said, tell me, according to their gradation of those eternal regions that are said to be attainable as the fruits of their own virtuous acts by regenerate persons engaged in the practice of virtue, speak unto me of others regions also of a similar kind, O learned sire. I do not wish to hear of actions towards which man's heart naturally inclineth, however interdicted or sinful they may be. Sanat-sujata said, those regenerate persons that take pride in their yoga practices, like strong men in their own strength, departing hence shine in the region of Brahman. Those regenerate persons that proudly exert in performing sacrifices and other Vedic rites as the fruit, that knowledge which is theirs, in consequence of those acts freed from this world, proceed to that region which is the abode of the deities. There are others again, conversant with the Vedas, who are of opinion that the performance of the sacrifices and rites ordained by the Vedas is obligatory, their non-performance being sinful, wedded to external forms, though seeking the development of the inner self, for they practice these rites for only virtue's sake, and not for the accomplishment of particular aims. These persons should not be regarded very highly, although some respect should be theirs. Wherever again food and drink worthy of a Brahmana are abundant, like grass and reeds in a spot during the rainy season, there should the yogin seek for his livelihood, without afflicting the householder of scanty means. By no means should he afflict his own self by hunger and thirst, in a place where there may be both inconvenience and danger to one for one's aversion to disclose one's superiority. He that doth not proclaim his superiority is better than he that doth. The food offered by that person who is not pained at the sight of another disclosing his superiority, and who never eateth without offering the prescribed share to Brahmanas and guests, is approved by the righteous, as a dog oftentimes devoureth its own evacuations to its injury. So those yogins devour their own vomit who procure their livelihood by disclosing their preeminence. The wise know him for a Brahmana who, living in the midst of kindred, wishes his religious practices to remain always unknown to them. What other Brahmana deserves to know the Supreme Soul that is unconditioned, without attributes, unchangeable, one and alone, and without duality of any kind? In consequence of such practices, a Kshatriya can know the Supreme Soul and behold it in his own soul. He that regardeth the soul to be acting and feeling self, what sins are not committed by that thief who robbeth the soul of its attributes? A Brahmana should be without exertion, should never accept gifts, should win the respect of the righteous, should be quiet, and though conversant with the Vedas, should seem to be otherwise, for then only may he attain to knowledge and know Brahman. They that are poor in earthly but rich in heavenly wealth and sacrifices become unconquerable and fearless, and they should be regarded as embodiments of Brahman. That person, even in this world, who by performing sacrifices succeedeth in meeting with the gods that bestow all kinds of desirable objects and performers of sacrifices, is not equal to him that knoweth Brahman, for the performer of sacrifices hath to undergo exertions, while he that knoweth Brahman attaineth to him without such exertions. He was said to be really honored who, destitute of actions, is honored by the deities. You should never regard himself as honored who is honored by others. One should not therefore grieveth when one is not honored by others. People act according to their nature, just as they open and shut their eyelids, and it is only the learned that pay respect to others. The man that is respected should think so. They again in this world that are foolish, apt to sin, and adepts in deceit, never pay respect to those that are worthy of respect. On the other hand, they always show disrespect to such persons. The world's esteem and asceticism, practices of Mauna, can never exist together. Know that this world is for those that are candidates of esteem, while the other world is for those that are devoted to asceticism. Here in this world, O Kshatriya, happiness, the world's esteem, resides in worldly prosperity. The latter, however, is an impediment to heavenly bliss. Heavenly prosperity, on the other hand, is unattainable by one that is without true wisdom. The righteous say that there are various kinds of gates, all difficult of being guarded, for giving access to the last kind of prosperity. These are truth, uprightness, modesty, self-control, purity of mind and conduct, and knowledge of the Vedas. These six are destructive of vanity and ignorance. Thus endeth section 42 in the Sanat-sujata Parva of the Udyoga Parva.